Hi, this is Professor Stucard, and we are going to work on our first lab assignment today. So, the first thing that we are going to need to do is to open up our Blackboard course shell. So, here is Blackboard. This is our course shell for week 1, our first lab, our week 1 lab we see here. We have some instructions for this lab assignment. We're going to explore a data set that is found using packages. We're going to start with an R Markdown file that I already kind of created and is attached. So that's this one here, the penguins. So again, click it and it will download for you. So I have it. I already downloaded it. It's in my downloads folder. Again, make sure you know exactly where it is. You'll see it looks like a notepad because, well, it is. And in fact, all of our R Markdown files can be opened in the typical notepad on your computer, and you can actually edit it there and then run it in an R compiler later, but okay, that's not really the way we want to necessarily do things because we're going to do everything in RStudio.cloud. So the first thing you need to do is, well, open RStudio.cloud. Again, create your GitHub account first, then use GitHub to log into RStudio. Once you log in, this is what it should look like. You'll have your workspace and all of your projects, which, again, if you're just starting, you have no projects. So, new project. And we're going to create our new RStudio project. And again, this might take a second to load up, but the really nice part here is that, again, RStudio.cloud, it's all cloud-based. You can do your work here. You can do it on any computer, and it's going to be saved anywhere. And again, the nice part is when you're working on these projects, you can actually make your projects public, then share the link with me, and I can actually look at your work and help you during this online class if you ever get stuck or are running into issues. Now again, we're going to be doing lots of different projects, so it's always a good idea to name them as well. And this is Penguins. Again, that's the name of my R Markdown file as well. All right, now that we see our R Markdown or I'm sorry, not R Markdown, we just see our RStudio. This is what it looks like the first time we log in. We only have 3 areas of our screen. The first is our console here on the left. So our console here on the left, this is where you're going to be doing most of your playing around. Most of the time you type code, this is where you want to type it first to make sure that it works. So again, you can do lots of just basic stuff. So you can even do math. 2 plus 3 is, 5. And so, again, the console is where we're going to be doing a lot of our work and playing around in our testing. The console is also where we can create objects that are going to go into our environment. So let's say I have the variable x and I want to store, say, the number 4 into it. So again, x, I have my little arrow, which is really the less than key, then minus, right? We make that arrow. So it's like we're taking 4, we're putting it into x. I hit enter, and now, oh look, we can see it over here. It's now in my environment. I see that I have a variable named x that has a value of 4. And in my console, I can even play around with that some more. So what's x plus 6? Oh, it's 10. Now, the nice part is your spaces don't really count in the console. R typically ignores spaces unless you're talking about strings, but so you can kind of type it any way you would like. So we have our console. Again, we could play around. We can do a lot in our console. Our environment is where we see any variables or data frames that we have stored. But we want to create R Markdown files. We want to use R Markdown because R Markdown lets us really have our reproducible code. It lets us make really professional looking projects and reports. So that's what we're going to be dealing with. Now again, I have kind of pre-created most of the R Markdown files for our labs with instructions and stuff like that as well. You can create your own. If you go over to File, New File, you can see that there's lots of different options. You can create just an R script. An R notebook is another good one that lets you kind of preserve a bunch of R code. It kind of works like a notepad, really. But we're going to be doing mostly R Markdown because we can really make that look professional. And then there's other things too. You can create apps using this. And, we see all those different types of, things that we can use. All right. Now, what I want to do though is I need to now bring my markdown file that I created, that I downloaded off of Blackboard, into RStudio.cloud. Now the way we're going to do that is this bottom right corner where we have our files. So again, our files and our plots, our data visualizations, everything is going to kind of show up here. But I need that Penguins file that I had just downloaded. So I need to upload it. So we click upload. You can see that you can upload from your other projects if you want, but in this case we need to browse our own computer. So browse, I put this in downloads. I made sure it was the only one. And so I'll open Penguins, click OK. And here it is. It shows up down here in our files. So I can click that, and now that opens another window sort of inside RStudio that has my R Markdown file, which again is nice and color-coded and has a bunch of other stuff. All right, now we can already see up here that it says, oh, we need packages, Knitr, Palmer Penguins, Tidyverse. They are required, not installed. Okay, so we're going to have to install all of our packages as well. Now, I'm going to install these in the console first, because once I install them in the console, I want to be able to use them in the console and the environment, and then R Markdown is really where I'm going to save everything. So, I have included in the introduction, and again, we should read through it, that again, there's these thousands of packages that are available publicly for us to look at with tons of different data sets and functions and stuff. We're going to be looking at the Palmer Penguins data set, but typically the first thing we need to do with all of our R projects is to load the packages. So we're going to load the packages Tidyverse and Palmer Penguins, and we need to install them first and then kind of load them using the library command. So our first function that we're going to use is the install packages function. So install.packages, and again, you're going to see what's really nice about using RStudio. It already started to autocomplete that function for me. And it will autocomplete all of the available functions as we go through, which helps to not make typos, and it can actually help you learn what is actually available and what you can use when you're doing your data analysis. Now, the Tidyverse package is not loaded yet. It's still outside of my RStudio workspace or my RStudio project. For anything that is external and not yet inside my RStudio environment, I need to put it in quotes. So my install packages function, that set of parentheses. Inside the parentheses, I need a set of quotes, and inside the quotes, I am putting Tidyverse. All right, and you're going to see now it's going to download Tidyverse, and that is going to take a few minutes. So I'm just going to pause this video, and I will be right back when this is done. All right, so that finally finished. That took, I don't know, a minute or so. And again, when you do this yourself, obviously, you can pause my video just as I pause my recording and see all the different packages that are actually installed. And again, that's the beauty of Tidyverse. Tidyverse is really a universe of a bunch of different packages that we all kind of use together. Now, once we have that installed, it is now part of my environment. If I go over here to packages, I can see that it has been expanded with a bunch of new packages that I can now actually run. And the way we do this now is we use our library function. Again, I'm doing all of this in the console, library, Tidyverse, and it will install those packages. And again, you can see now that it exists inside my environment, it actually started to autocomplete for me there. Now, when I run this, not going to take nearly as long because it's just installing, and we see, okay, good. It installed the packages ggplot, tibble, tidyr, readr, perr, diplar, stringr, and forcats. So again, that's really, really nice, and it tells us that there are some conflicts because the filter function is used in two different packages, and so is the lag function. But again, that's not really going to matter for our purposes. So now I have Tidyverse. Tidyverse gives me all the functions that I need to really play around with and do data exploration. And then I also need to install the Palmer Penguins package. So again, it's outside, so I need to install Palmer Penguins. I almost always spell penguins wrong, but that seemed to work. This one does not take nearly as long. See, that one's already done because it's just a couple of data sets. And then again, library and Palmer Penguins. Again, now that it exists, it auto-completes, and again, when it does the autocomplete, if you hover over it, it will even explain to you what is going on, what kind of package it is, or a function, or whatever it is. So again, we're looking at size measurements of some, well, penguins here. So autocomplete, enter, we're loaded in and good to go. All right, so we installed and loaded our packages. So now the next thing I want to do is really explore my data in this data set. Now, here's one thing I'm going to do kind of first. So we have this data set called penguins, and it exists. And if I type penguins now, I can see, oh, it's starting to autocomplete penguins. It is a data set here. I press enter, and we have this our data frame here again, which is, you can think of almost as a spreadsheet type of thing, where again we have our variables for species, island, build length, build depth, all of that over here, and we can see that there's a bunch more rows and a bunch more variables. Now what I want to do is again take that data set, because again it exists now in RStudio, but I want it to actually be in my environment. Because once it's in my environment, I can actually take a better look at it. So I'm going to store penguins in penguins. All right, and so now I'm creating an object called penguins that's going to have my data frame penguins. And if that's a little confusing, we can do penguins underscore df. We can call it that so that we see that, okay, I'm making a data frame out of my penguins data. And when I press enter, it just showed up in my environment over here. Penguins underscore df. So I created a new object in my environment. You can click this and it will look much more like a spreadsheet that you're probably used to, like if you're using Excel. So you can scroll through, you can see the variables and see everything that is really involved there as well. Now, anytime we start looking at a data set, what we really want to do is well, kind of explore the data first, and that's really what we're doing. So we want to know some basic characteristics of this data set. And here are the functions that we typically used. So the first is the question mark. So again, the question mark is basically our general help function. Anytime we're not really sure, use the question mark and it will pop up in that bottom right corner. So again, if I use question mark and then I do penguins, which is my data set here, not necessarily my data frame in the environment, but again, the data set that came with the Palmer Penguins package that we installed, question mark, it shows up in the right here. This is size measurements for adult foraging penguins near Palmer Station, Antarctica. The description includes measurements for a penguin species, island in the Palmer size for flipper, length, body mass, build dimensions, sex, the usage, so it's called penguins. The format, it is a Tibble. Tibble is another word for data frame. We're going to use them interchangeably. There's a slight difference that, again, Tibble is really the tidyverse version, but it's not going to make a difference for what we're really doing. So 344 rows, 8 variables, and sometimes it even describes our variables. So we have species. So it's a factor denoting penguin species of either Adelie, Chinstrap, or Gentoo. The island, is it the island Bisco, Dream, or Torgenson? Build length in millimeters, build depth in millimeters, flipper length, body mass in grams, sex, and the year of the study. And this one even includes the source. So we can actually do more research on this Palmer Penguin data if we so desired. All right, so that's what we have here. And again, a lot of times it's a good idea to, again, like I said, play around, just kind of explore the data at first. This is really one of those concepts, like a lot of good math. You should spend a decent amount of time just coming up with a plan, trying to understand what you're doing before you just start randomly throwing functions or throwing code or throwing math on your paper or in the console. Try to have a plan first. So again, I have some of the other functions listed there as well. So head, penguins, and again, now that it is a data frame, I could do my data frame, or I could use the penguins one there that again is that data set that comes with the package. And that shows me the first 6 rows. So again, I can see, okay, what's going on? What does it look like? We have species, island, okay, all those variables. N row, and so N row, penguins data frame. And again, you'll see it auto-completes to the penguins data frame from the package or the penguins data frame that is in our environment. So again, we can kind of go back and forth. It's really, really nice that way. So the number of rows is 344. That means there's 344 observations, which means there are 344 different penguins in this case that are included in this data set. And columns, and again, we can do the same thing with penguins data frame. There's 8. And again, those columns are your variables, and we actually already talked about that over here in the help function. Here are my 8 different variables and what they look like. Now, when we're talking about variables, the glimpse function is very, very, very useful for understanding our variables as well and how we can explore them further. So, again, I'm going to use my penguins data frame, and I'm going to use glimpse. And now glimpse. I can see here in my console that there are 8 columns for my 8 variables. Species, which is a factor. Factor means there's only a set number of possible answers for that variable. So again, it's got to be either the Adelie, the Chinstrap, or the Gentoo. Island, again, that's a factor, which means there's only a few possible choices. And in this case, it's Torgenson. Let me look. Oh, Bisco Dream. Yeah, so forth. Build length in millimeters, that is dBl for double. That means it's a number with decimals. Build depth, dBl. Again, that's a number with decimals. Flipper length, int. So that means it's an integer. That means it's got to be a whole number. Sex, that's a factor. Again, because there's only 2 choices. It's either a male penguin or a female penguin. Again, we know that there's only 3 years, but they have it stored as an integer for 2007, 2008, and 2009. So now we know more about the variables. So we've done all that. Now your job, and I'm not going to do this for you, is to kind of question, well, how can I use this data? What kind of analysis can I do? Now that I know the variables and what I'm working with, what can I actually do with that? Now, once you fill out your summary, it is time to knit this into a professional report. So, 2 things. First, we have our header. The title is Penguins. That's good. The author, well, I'm the author, but you're the one who's handing in the report, so change that author name to your name. And then also change the date to reflect our current date, which is definitely not from 2021. All right. Once you have changed those things, we want to knit it. And we choose the output. So by default, typically the output default is HTML document. And if I just click PDF, we need to install a Markdown package. You have to install a bunch of packages. This might take a second or 2. So I'm going to pause the video again, let it run through. We're going to see what it looks like because you don't need to just see, things compiling. But again, you'll see it working there, and I will be right back. All right, so it finished. It opened up a new HTML, or basically a new browser window. And look, instead of being in like that really blocky font, it looks all professional. I have things that are different sizes. I can add bold. I can add italics. I can add my functions. I can add everything else. And again, make it kind of look a professional looking website. Now, that's not the way I want you guys to actually do things. You're going to be submitting to me these files as PDFs. Because again, the PDFs are really the professional looking documents. So we're going to click knit this to PDF instead. All right, again, this might take a second, so I'll be right back. All right, so now we have a PDF file. Again, it looks a little bit different. It kind of uses the LaTeX formatting, if you've ever used that to make professional math documents before. Here we have our title. We have different sized fonts. We can use bold, italics. We can see things in different colors. And again, hopefully your summary is all filled in. Now that we have this as a PDF document, we need to save the PDF. So again, the download button is probably the easiest. So we're going to download that. so that we save it. Again, that probably defaults to my downloads, which sure enough, now I have a document here. We should probably retitle that to make it look better, but yeah, it is the Penguins one, so I'll just rename that Penguins Lab. And that is what you're going to submit to me as your work. Of course, you will have changed the names at the top, and your summary is actually going to have a summary. You're going to tell me what you can explore with that data. Submit that, and that is your first lab. And I suggest that you take some time, play around with R a little bit, play around with the console, play around with just typing random things in, get used to it, because this is what we're going to be using for the entire semester. All right, hopefully that all went well. Again, don't forget, you can pause these videos, restart them, look at them again, submit that assignment for your lab, and good luck. Let me know if you have any questions. Take care of yourselves.